And I know people are going to keep popping in as soon as we start here. And we are streaming on Facebook Live. So if you don't want your face to be seen on Facebook Live, just go ahead and turn off your camera. We are going to have some Q&A at the end. So, please stay muted during the presentation, but then we'll have some time for speakers later on. And you'll be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you'd like. I want to welcome everybody tonight to our presentation for the hazardous waste loophole. We're very lucky to have two speakers with us tonight, two wonderful champions here in Pennsylvania, PA Representative Sara Innamorato and Senator Katie Muth. So in spite of the fact that Pennsylvania is the leading producer of oil and gas waste, the oil and gas waste is exempt from PA hazardous waste regulations. These wastes can be extremely harmful to human health and the environment. And so we're here tonight with Representative Innamorato and Senator Muth to talk about how they're working to close the waste loophole. So I am going to kick it off by sending it over to you, Representative Innamorato. So if you want to go ahead and do your presentation, and we'll take some questions in the chat. If folks would like to make comments in the chat online, they certainly can on Facebook, or if you'd like to make comments in the chat in Zoom, we're happy to take those as well. And so go ahead and take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. And I'm actually, Senator Muth is going to kick off the beginning of our presentation and give you a little bit of an overview of the problem. I know you guys have had a lot of folks on different webinars who are technical experts, who are scientists, who are doctors, who have been talking a lot about this issue with you all. We're going to leave that expertise to them, but we're going to give you a broad overview of the laws that allow for this to happen, and then our proposed legislation, what that does. And then I'm going to wrap up our presentation with talking about how the process works in Harrisburg when you're moving pieces of legislation and where to put pressure and who to put that pressure on. And then we'll kind of wrap up with best practices when having those visits with legislators, and then we'll dive into your questions. So I'm looking forward to the next hour we have together, and I'll kick it over to Senator Muth.
Thank you, Sarah. I really am pumped to talk about this, so pumped that it was difficult to make short slides. So I will make sure that I am trying to be brief and concise, but as a lifelong Pennsylvanian, many of the things we're going to discuss, if not all tonight, I did not know were permitted in Pennsylvania. And I think that it's really important as a public awareness effort that we share as much information about that. But with that said, it's difficult because it gets a little in the weeds sometimes to fully understand the problem. So Pennsylvania, our beloved home, we have a lengthy history of being an extraction corporate state. We started with timber, the coal era, oil and gas, and many of those aftermaths we're still trying to recover from. Pennsylvania has over 90,000 miles of pipelines, and conventional and unconventional wells, if you're not sure what those are, unconventional is what we call hydraulic fracturing, which became in the Marcellus shale boom in the 2008-9 era of Pennsylvania. And we also have a lengthy history of just regular conventional wells, as you see the numbers there. So look at those numbers. We have a whole bunch of gas and oil infrastructure, both active and inactive and abandoned in our Commonwealth, and probably leads us directly why we are where we are today. So with that said, all of these wells have their own pathway to contamination, if not handled properly, and many of them have not been. Switching gears into how we got here, Pennsylvania, the legislature, at least Sarah and I can say for quite some time now, has been heavily invested in the argument of jobs, jobs, jobs. This is what keeps our state going, is gas and oil, especially since the Marcellus shale boom. This alleged economic benefit is really, not helping local communities as much as it's said to be. And it's really an excuse not to adequately regulate or enforce environmental and public health regulations. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, because you might sit here throughout this and say, WTF, how do we get here? How is this allowed, right? So the boom and bust is something Rep. Innamorato taught me a lot about, on how these industries come into communities. Think of the coal towns. I grew up in Westmoreland County, so I'm very much well aware. I think my brother played baseball in Export next to coal waste heap. So once these extraction entities get out of town and leave the residents with the mess to clean up and no jobs, you know, we have not done a great job of making sure corporations clean up after themselves when operating in our Commonwealth. And if you want my honest opinion, it's probably going to be coal 2.0. With this latest fracking boom, because companies have ways of declaring bankruptcy and not cleaning up after themselves. So then we have the cozy relationship, lengthy, decades-long relationship with government officials. Doesn't matter with whether you have a D or an R after your name, whatever your party affiliation is. This is a bipartisan addiction to gas and oil in Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, it's still ongoing today. So that's terrifying. Next slide, Sarah. Thank you. So we went quickly through all of this gas and oil activity that's happening across the Commonwealth. And so with any energy industry, even a nuke plant, right? We know about nuclear waste. There was coal waste. Where is the waste going, and what is in the waste from the gas and oil industry? Next slide. So types of drilling waste. This is can get way more intricate. There's plenty of resources and research out there that really gives a rundown of the different types of waste, but there's solid and then there's liquid waste. You'll hear the terminology produced water and flow back tossed around in industry. Really what it means, to be blunt, is a contaminated mess of chemicals, toxins, and radioactive isotopes that can harm and kill the environment and people. We have leachate, which think of the groundwater being contaminated or surface water being contaminated after this waste is disposed of, typically in landfills. We have sludge, which is giant frac pits full of sludge where workers have to go in and clean that out. Brine, you ever see trucks in the rural areas putting on dirt roads this fluid? It is actually brine from frac water that's radioactive and it's not healthy. They also use it from, that is both conventional and unconventional brine. So when we talk about all of this, I want to be clear, because industry will say, this doesn't apply to conventional. All of this applies across the board, conventional or unconventional waste. Drill cuttings, it's pretty much the stuff that comes back up after they've drilled, can become part of the sludge that's stored until it's disposed of. We also have contaminated equipment. If you want to read a crazy book about that, Crude Justice is one that Rep. Innamorato had me reading and terrified in the middle of the night for several months of my life. But it's about Louisiana and a brother-owned company that cleaned pipe scale. And scale is the residual junk, toxic stuff that's left behind inside a pipe for gas and oil infrastructure. And DEP to this day still cannot answer Rep. Innamorato. She's asked 17 times, maybe 18, do we clean pipes in Pennsylvania? And if so, where does the scale go? So we will follow up when we have an answer to that horrifying question. Next slide. So what is in the waste? Great question. Not many people know. I think Dick Cheney does. So we'll get to him in a moment. So every stage of oil and gas production can produce what is known as T-norm. So technologically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material. So that's T-norm is just an acronym. And that includes, you know, radium-226, 228, without getting into the weeds. The longer radium-226 and 228 sit, they can turn into some pretty nasty, some of the most toxic substances on this planet, just while they're being stored in these frac pits, or frac tanks rather, which eventually get transported to landfills typically, And we've learned that although they do a very generic scan-in of this waste when it is dropped off, I'm sure many of you know about the Westmoreland landfill, but that there was waste disposed of there in the middle of the night with no one measuring it or scanning it. And also the way that the DEP tests at these landfills does not test for all the different types of isotopes of radioactivity, or radium rather, and also does not get to the middle. Like we said, the longer it sits, so if you scan the top of it versus the center of it, the readings can be very different. So there are some other really horrifying things that you can read there: glycols, carcinogenic trihalomethanes, there's bromide, manganese, arsenic. The long of the short of it is this: the EPA, our lovely Environmental Protection Agency at the federal government, identifies over 1,000 chemicals that are used with unconventional drilling. The law allows these corporations, and not just the drillers, but also the entity that manufactures the drilling fluid, to withhold its trade secret ingredients for proprietary reasons, saying that it would decrease competition among the market and they wouldn't be as competitive in terms of the drilling fluid market. And basically that says we don't know what to even test for sometimes, because we don't know what's in everything, which again is quite horrifying. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Sarah, on that one, because you're the radium girl, no pun intended. That's a book if no one knows that. Okay, next slide. Okay. So where does this waste end up? And if you're not terrified already, happy Halloween, you're about to be really terrified. So I tried to buy a radioactive pop-up hamper that they sell at Halloween at Lowe's, but they were all sold out because I was going to sit it next to me during this. But anyway, landfills. There are a lot of landfills in Pennsylvania. So all the people that live out in the Southeast or other parts of the state that may not have a frac pad in their backyard, they should be worried about the landfill in their backyard, because the landfill, I think it's on another slide, the DEP admitted to Representative Innamorato and I a few weeks ago during a September 30th hearing, which you should all watch sometime in your free time, but that they had to get back to us on the total number of landfills in Pennsylvania. So that should really horrify you that our own state agency can't provide it. And they knew what they were testifying on, by the way. We didn't blindside them. But we had records through the Public Herald's documentation and data collection that over 40 Pennsylvania landfills, you heard me, 40, do take frac waste. So this radioactive waste is dumped currently in 40 landfills across Pennsylvania, hundreds of thousands of tons. And so what happens when leachate from that waste is sitting can obviously contaminate, leach into the groundwater, into the aquifer where we all get our clean water from, and also the surface water that ends up in our streams, our lakes, rivers. There is also a mechanism in which this waste, after it's processed and separated into just water, can be discharged into the waterways and drinking water sources of our state. That is legal. The dilution theory is that if we dilute it down, it isn't so harmful. Just so you know, I believe early on in the shale boom, they did test some private well water supplies with contamination issues for some radioactive components, and then immediately stopped. So obviously they saw something they didn't like and they just stopped testing for it, and there's no requirement under the law to do so, nor federally. So that wastewater treatment facility, if you see that little barn in that picture, that is in Dimock, Pennsylvania, or Dimock, Susquehanna County. And the township is debating putting in a Eureka wastewater treatment facility if poor Dimock has not been through enough of being completely exploited by the industry. So I went to Dimock in April, I believe, on a Tuesday night, very rainy, and went to the township meeting. to hear about this treatment facility. And if you don't know what second-class drinking water is, I don't know either, but apparently it's safe to drink. And that's what they produce after they process at their treatment facilities. This processed water also can end up in pool salts that are currently sold at Lowe's and Home Depot. And so that's terrifying. And that's Scott Perry's Lodge. That's funny in the comments. We're going to refrain from talking about Scott Perry from the DEP tonight. And also road spreading. So de-icing agents can often be composed of frac waste, brine, dust suppression. Currently in Pennsylvania, due to a court order or consent agreement, some legal thing, I'm not a lawyer, full disclosure, I just read a lot of legal documents. They're not allowed to use unconventional waste for de-icing and dust suppression, although we've had reports from various municipalities, especially in rural areas where this is happening and the township or borough is purchasing it anyway because of the lack of oversight. Sewage treatment plants have been utterly decimated and destroyed from its internal components because this waste can sometimes be sent there to be processed, and it's so toxic that it breaks down not just the operational parts of the pipes and the different parts of filtration at a sewage treatment plant, but it also kills all of the bacteria that you need to keep the plant running. So that's how toxic it is. And there have been many documented cases, including I can't remember the name of it, Sarah, the one next to the Westmoreland landfill. Is it the Bell Vernon? I don't want to misspeak. Okay, Jillian's just shaking her head. And we actually had a wonderful person there that worked there testify at our September 30th hearing. And God bless him, trying to do his job was very difficult due to radioactive crap all dumped into his plant. And this also happened in Dimmock as well. Their sewage system was decimated, causing over $40,000 in damage. And if they hadn't caught it, that would have ruined the whole plant, but they were able to shut part of it down. So when you think about this, it's like, where do we all live is downstream from somewhere. And so again, just because you don't have a frac pad in your backyard doesn't mean that you and your family are not harmed. Next slide. So this is just a recap. Sara, Rep. Innamorato has this handout probably on our website. I think I do too, but we can give this PDF out so you guys can send it out after. It just does a little bit better of a job of talking about how it's dispersed, this waste. And remember, the cheapest thing is what industry wants. The more expensive it is to get rid of waste, the more they have to pay and decrease their profits, right? So this has everything to do with convenience for industry's bottom line and nothing to do with proper disposal, public health, or environmental safety. So just keep that in mind, and in the sense of, we're going to talk about why that happens. Next slide. So why is this a problem? I'm sure you probably all think this is a problem because why is there radioactive waste being permitted to be disposed of in our communities with our state agencies? And massive exemptions exist to allow this, but it is just an epic example of gross negligence and contamination. And so all of this can cause tremendous harm, irreversible in some cases, to our streams, our water supplies, really causing cancer. And I think that's the one piece we don't have on a slide, so I'll just say it here, is that the data collection of impact from this industry is very, very poor in Pennsylvania. And the best data you get is not from the government that's supposed to be protecting people. And so thank you to any environmental health network, any entity, Protect PT, all of you that have come together to work together to get this data, because without it, we wouldn't even have what we know now. And we really need to do a better job at demanding this be documented. Currently, right now, there is no documentation or database maintained showing the level of T-norm that's taken in. So how toxic each load of waste is. That is not tracked by the DEP. They do not work with the Department of Health, even to overlay, like, think of a map, right? You're like, oh, all the frac pads, all the landfills. And then you overlay that map with just basic cancer instances, right? Incidents. And so that's just basic, like overlay of correlation. Doesn't mean it's, you know, causing, but we're not even doing that, or even doing it with the number of violations that industry is reporting, which would be a really simplistic way of just getting some basic data. So our state regulators could change this. If they so choose. We don't have to wait for the federal government, but instead our families and our communities have to live, work, and play near these disposal sites, in addition to where industry is constructing frac pads and cracker plants. And one thing we didn't touch on, another way to get rid of waste, is injection wells, which you all probably know a little bit about. Again, still causing contamination of groundwater and surface water, and again, permitted in Pennsylvania. Next slide. So this is a harder one to see. Maybe not if you have your full screen up. I have like a split screen so I don't mess anything up. You see our buddy Dick Cheney there. Go Dick Cheney. And that's to reference the Halliburton Loophole. If you haven't watched the movie Vice, I hadn't watched it, and I watched it like maybe 6 months ago, and I was terrified. But it certainly helped me understand a little bit of the history here and why these exemptions exist. And I think one thing that we've not been able to get an answer on is, if this industry is so safe, then why do you need loopholes and exemptions? And so these are all the things, all the different regulations that unconventional drilling, hydraulic fracturing is exempt from, meaning they get a pass compared to any other industry, any other manufacturing industry. They're allowed to pollute and pretty much kill us without any consequence. And even the Right to Know Act, not to be able to know for emergency planning, is kind of just wild that you wouldn't even be able. I threw that on there from the standpoint of transparency and not even being able to know what industry is around you and what you do if there's in the case of emergency. So not only could you be poisoned, you could then also face an emergency crisis and not know how to evacuate or keep your family safe. Next slide. So currently our laws, yes, we are fracked. They allow currently now, without any action, all of these things. So raw or treated fracking wastewater, like I said, can be discharged into surface waters. You can also do road spreading. With a permit, wastewater containing radioactive waste can be buried on well pads or in injection wells with no standard for radioactivity. So actually, this is something I learned today. And Sara, Rep. Innamorato, please don't make fun of me, but I've read the NRDC report 95 times. And then I realized this one part of the state comparison chart. And the report I'm referring to is called Hot Fracking Mess. And it says that drilling waste can be buried on well sites, on well pads by permit with no T-norm standard. So for whatever reason, I'm like, that means it can be buried. So now that like start a whole new line of questioning to the DEP for me is, can you please send me the list of permitted areas where you're allowed to bury? Like there's no casing, there's no barrier between it. I mean, at least I'm not aware of. So that's something on my research to-do list, which is like even, I mean, injection wells terrify me, but that just seems even more bizarre. So obviously wastewater from fracking or conventional wells can be used for irrigation or farming with no standards for radioactivity. So when you think about our food chain, our food cycle, farmers can use conventional brine in a farm field and still say these are, you know, whatever, organic dairy cows or whatever. I don't know if, I mean, grade A beef, whatever it is. And we would never know the difference because there's no reporting requirement. Again, municipal landfills can accept drilling waste with approval from DEP and facility specific limits on radioactivity, but we just said they don't test for all of it. So, yeah. Oh, thank you, Veronica. The burying of drill waste pits. I don't know why I thought that was banned. Like from reading my Amity and Prosperity, I call it the Bible. Yeah. So we talked about the record showing the landfills. Again, DEP could not tell us how many landfills exist in Pennsylvania off the top of their heads. It's got a lot of data in their minds, I suppose. But they did state, which kind of blew me away, I don't know about you, Rep. Innamorato, that all landfills could. They didn't know the number that actually do. They didn't know the number that actually exists in its totality of landfills, but they said that any landfill in Pennsylvania could take radioactive waste from the fracking industry or the gas and oil industry. So again, that's terrifying. Next slide. So our bills. Our bills are not radical, tree-hugging, crazy fracking ban, oh my heavens, efforts. These are basic, common sense pieces of legislation that would put this industry in line with any other industry. So it would repeal that 30-year-old exemption from testing hazardous waste for the gas and oil industry, and it would update the Solid Waste Management Act. Again, keeping industry in line with other, this industry in line with others that have to uphold these standards already. And this is just one really important set of bills to solve this really large problem in our Commonwealth, right? So it is specifically targeted to help protect our air, because we didn't really talk about what happens when landfill waste becomes an inhalant. So you can then be breathing in radioactive dust, which is really sad. And I spoke to a gentleman who lives next to Westmoreland landfill who is experiencing that. And then also just making sure that our waterways and drinking water supplies are completely protected from this waste. Next slide. Again, this gets into the nuts and bolts of the bills. The bills are introduced in both House and Senate. So Sara, Rep. Innamorato, is going to explain that shortly on what that means and the process of all the things in the dome of corruption of the General Assembly of Pennsylvania. And, you know, we really just want proper testing and of the waste, treatment of the waste. And the reality is this is so expensive for industry in their minds that closing these loopholes, you know, that makes them make less money. And you and I and anybody impacted by this were just a piece of negotiation on a table of the cost of doing business here in Pennsylvania. So again, the coal industry, they do this. Like, this is not like all of these industries already adhere to these really important regulations, and they should play by, the gas and oil industry should play by the same rules. Next slide. So to be clear, these bills do not ban fracking. They do not require chemical disclosure, and it does not have any kind of requirement about remediation regarding the cleanup of the damage done already. Those are other bills. We don't want to overwhelm you all in one night. And those are all really necessary as well. So there's a ton of work to do here in Pennsylvania to clean up PA and to keep our communities safe and healthy. And so this is, again, a campaign of public awareness, because the more people know about this, the more, I hate to say it, we all need to be horrified and outraged and take that anger into action and demand our government to do what it was intended to do, which was to work and protect us, not special interests, corporations, Wall Street, and uber wealthy people like Dick Cheney. So next slide. It's all you.
That's over to me. Thank you, Senator Muth. And you are spot on in the way that you kind of gave a summary of what our bills are doing. Really, why that loophole exists at the state level is because there's a loophole in the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act that was enacted in 1976. And what happened in 1980, they money came in from the oil and gas industry and said, hey, can you exempt us for a few years? Let's study it. So they studied it, and the reports came back and said, hey, this waste contains toxic materials. And they were like, oh, we're just going to keep it under this other section instead of the other one. So even if you want to talk, if you don't want to talk about the public health piece and all this other thing, you can just talk about it as being a matter of fairness and subjecting the oil and gas industry to the same regulations that any other manufacturing or pollution producing industry is subjected to. And if they don't have an issue with, you know, if their waste isn't harmful, if it isn't radioactive, then they should be okay testing it. And then they can dispose of it in that manner. We're just really wanting peace of mind. But the reason that exists, you know, we asked this to the DEP, we asked this a lot in our hearing, and we were given no scientific reason why it was exempt. We were given no public health reason why it was exempt. It is purely political. And you can go back and read reports from the 80s on why this loophole exists. Now, the state is allowed to raise those standards, right? We have to, the Fed set the minimum baseline. We're allowed to exceed that, though. So that is something we can do in Pennsylvania, and New York State did successfully in August of 2020. So, you know, all of you may know, well, not all of you, some of you may be too young to know, Mr. Bill here from Schoolhouse Rock. And it's a lovely song that talks about how a bill becomes a law. And what we actually know, being state representatives and state senators, is that that's not exactly how it works. It seems to be that the people with the most money and the most resources are the people who get FaceTime with lawmakers and are able to push their highly specific agenda, which when that happens, that means the things that need to happen in the public interest get pushed aside. And so what I'm going to spend hopefully like 10, 15 minutes with you talking about is kind of how to push back on that, because, you know, while we may not have a lot of money or giant corporations, we can get numbers. That's how we can battle this, is by organizing and understanding the system in which we are trying to operate. So pop quiz, I want you guys to use the chat and type in who your state representative and state senator is. So I'll give you a couple moments to do that. And if you don't know, just be like, I don't know, which is fine too. Well, we got some people who do know, but I also know, yeah, it's Megan and Veronica, which we definitely know. Good, some people know who their reps are. So that's really going to be step one. And I did want to share with you all this website. I'll throw it in the chat. I really love it because, I don't want to send that. Because what you do is you type in your address. This is my office address. And it tells you who all your local officials are. So I know who my county council person is, because all these folks are going to be really important to having meetings depending on what you're asking them to do. So it has your state officials and then your national folks. So I really love this website and really getting to know the details of who represents you and who holds the power there. I'm sorry. And like I mentioned before, the Schoolhouse Rock video makes us seem like, okay, you introduce a bill, it goes here, it goes here, it goes to the governor's desk, it gets signed into law. But the reality is that it is much more messy than that. And there are a lot of opportunities to move a bill and put pressure on certain entities in order to raise awareness on an issue and get legislation to move. So this graph is a very simplified version on how essentially how a bill can become a law in the state of Pennsylvania. We don't have a high success rate in passing laws in Pennsylvania. A lot of that has to do with our House rules, but I won't bore you with that this evening. You know, essentially we got this idea for closing the hazardous waste loophole and the leachate loophole because of investigative reporting that was happening, specifically around the whistleblower Guy Krupa at the Bell Vernon site that Senator Muth mentioned earlier. Once we had that story, we were able to implement our practice of co-governance, which is working with impacted communities and stakeholders, legal experts, and folks who have been doing this work for quite some time. And nearly after a year of discussions and reviews from local and national experts, we produced some bill language. And so we introduced it. Once we introduced it, it got a bill number, which is why you see House bill and Senate bill. So if you ever see the abbreviation SB and HB, that's what they stand for, House bill and Senate bill. Right now, our bill is in committee. It was referred to I believe in the Senate, it's in the Environmental, Energy and Resources Committee, and it's the same in the House. So you can see we have a lot more steps to go before that bill reaches the governor's desk. And I'm going to talk through a little bit about kind of how this moves. So like I mentioned first, before you even have a bill number, you have to set the intent early, and that you do by way of co-sponsorship memo. Co-sponsorship memo is not a bill. Again, it is an intent. I'm going to include a link here in the chat too. This website is not a very user-friendly website, but it is the state website. So anything that we do on the House floor, any bill that's introduced, it has to live here. And on this website, you'll find co-sponsorship memos, which you can look up by state representative, by keyword, what bills are in committee. I won't go through all the features of it, but you know, if you have some time, click around on it. You can click on the bill number, and that's how you can kind of see where it's been. You can see who co-sponsored it. So if any of you who typed in who your representatives are, you can go ahead, send them a thank you note for signing on to the bill, because that always is a great thing to do too. And you can also see if your representative isn't co-sponsoring this. So this is going to give you some information when you go and meet with your representative and talk about this issue and why it's important to you. And again, this is just going to be your state level. This is just House members. The Senate bill looks different. It has the Senate members on there. So you'll want to look at that. So yeah, this will give you all that information. If you have a bill, you can subscribe to updates. So if the bill does move through that system, you can get alerted as well. So there is some features on there. And then there's another, I just found out this link today. It's called openstates.org, and it aggregates the data from state house websites and it puts it in a much easier, user-friendly format. And so this is, these are all the sponsors on the bill. As you can tell, they pulled all the information from there. You can tell that it's just Democrats supporting it at the moment. But you know, we hope to change that through the education and outreach that we're doing across the state. And then you can see here where it was referred to the Environmental Resource and Energy Committee. PN means printer number. Sometimes bills have to get reprinted because they have a spelling error or they put it under the wrong statute. So that's what printer number means. There's only one version of this bill, so it only has one printer number. Not super important, but just, you know, fun facts. So that's a little bit about the co-sponsorship and the website where you can find out more information on bills and who's on there. And then, like I said, this would be the latest version of the bill. Again, it lists all the co-sponsors. It tells you what session we're in. House sessions are 2 years. They're 2-year terms. So even numbered years, all of your state representatives have to run for re-election. State Senate is 4, and they're alternating. So only half of the Senate is up for re-election during any year. And then right here, where it says referred to committee, it will tell you that information as well and the date that that was done. So that's just a little bit about that space. And then what you'll see below there is the text of the bill and what sections of law that it modifies. So the 2 bills that we have, the close hazardous waste loophole. If you read the New York bill, it's like 3 sentences long because that's the way that their regulatory bills were written, and they just had to kind of remove some language. So the bill was really short. This we actually have to modify 2 different statutes. So Title 58, which manages oil and gas stuff, and then the Solid Waste Management Act. So that's why there's 2 separate bills, because they both reference managing waste produced by the oil and gas industry. So that's why, in case you're wondering why there has to be so many bills, it's because language needs to change in different titles and statutes. When that happens, they have to be individual bills, and why it's more complex. So briefly, these are the House committees. So when you have a bill, it first gets introduced, and then the leader has to assign it to a committee. And you can kind of pick what committee. Oftentimes it's the one that makes the most sense. Sometimes it makes 0 sense. But it's really important to understand committees, because you can't ever get a vote on the House floor unless you get a vote in committee. And so, like I said, ours is in the Environmental Resource and Energy Committee. But you know, if you're interested in this topic and other bills pertaining to oil and gas infrastructure in the House, sometimes Commerce or Consumer Affairs will get bills that relate to oil and gas regulations. So using the website I showed you, you can look up what House members and what Senate members are on there. Because of the way, and this is just the Senate committees, as you see, they're a little different because there are fewer Senate members. But it's important to know who's on these committees, because we have the committee chairs have a lot of power in this scenario, where they're the ones who set the agenda. And you have a minority and a majority chair. The majority chairs in both the House and the Senate are Republicans, and the minorities are Democrats. So when you look up who's ahead of this, really, if you have some committee folks that work really well together and they want to like only bring things up that they agree on, that's more of like local government committee. The Environmental Resources and Energy Committee is like contentious. So there's, so really, if you do want someone to bring up the bill for consideration, it would be the majority chair. Unfortunately, in the House, I don't know the Senate leader very, very well in that committee, but in the House, the chair is Daryl Metcalf. So it's highly unlikely that he would consider a bill like this. But that's who, you would want to, once you talk to your own rep, you'd probably want to talk to him about bringing it up, or send him an email on bringing up the bill and why it's important to you and your community. You can also look at the members of that committee, again, on the majority and minority party, and focus on the majority members, and see, again, try to contact them, see if you know anyone who lives in their district and they can contact them, and then put pressure on the chair. But that's why I bring up this piece of infrastructure, because it's important to know that you can talk to your representative, but there are other key players in the movement of bills that you kind of have to understand as well. So again, all of that can be found on that website. You may also hear the word caucus thrown around. So committees are official. They're the ones that consider the bills. You also have caucuses. And there are two different kinds of caucuses in Pennsylvania, or in this like General Assembly. One is like issue-based caucuses, which are unofficial. So they're as unproductive as the craft beer caucus or the seersucker caucus, and they're like a joke. And then you have other caucuses like the climate caucus, which is bicameral, meaning it's in both the House and the Senate. It can be bipartisan. There might be one Republican who's on the climate caucus, but that's run by, it's a House member, I think. I don't know though. But that's run by Rep. Otten, who's out in the Southeast, by Senator Muth, and she really does an amazing job of keeping members engaged, making sure that there's an agenda that the caucus is supporting, that they send letters of support. It's hard to find the members of different caucuses. There's no official thing, like there's not a website for all the caucuses. There's not a list of members on all the caucuses. It's kind of like one of those things like you have to know. But they can be productive. You also have majority minority party caucuses. So you have a Democrat caucus and you have a Republican caucus. Why that's important is because each caucus elects leadership positions. And again, they play a critical role in setting an agenda. So after you've talked to your representative and state senator, after you've talked to the people who are on the committee, then it's looking at who's the Speaker of the House, who is the leader of the majority party, how do I have any connections there? Can I talk to that person? Can I send them letters? Can I target them? And then, and then the Senate has their leadership. The other reason why this is important, and a lot of you may have known that we did a policy hearing on this, in the absence of a committee considering a bill, we do have a policy, each caucus and each, the House and Senate have a policy committee, and that chair can work with members to do a public hearing on anything. And actually Senator Muth is in leadership in the Senate, and why we were able to do that really amazing 5-hour-long hearing. That was like extremely informative, and also got the DEP on the record saying some things that they probably didn't want on the record. I'll just say that. So if you hear the word caucus thrown around, just so you know and have that context, different than a committee. So just wanted to put that out there and make sure y'all knew what that was. But really, when you're working on passing a bill, you're going to have to work in all spaces. So the House, the Senate, and then hopefully to get it across the finish line and get it to be signed by the governor. And, when you go to Harrisburg, some of you may have been here for this rally. This was the day before the world shut down in March for COVID-19. We did a rally against HB 1100, which was a giveaway for the petrochemical industry, creating a really unfair advantage for them. And as a host of all these other things. And so rallies are super important. They show that we have strength in numbers. They're a really good press strategy. But I do have to say, I don't really think that rallies change the hearts and minds of legislators. You know, it's a way to kind of go and thank the people who've been fighting with you. But really what you want to do is, you know, set up those one-on-one meetings. And, you know, this is, if you talk to Senator Muth and I, this is where we spend the majority of our time. And this is where elected officials should spend the majority of their time. It's not writing legislation, actually. It is meeting with their constituents and meeting with people who have a story to share on how state government is impacting their lives. So this is, I'm talking about a crosswalk in Millville with one of our senior high rises. Senator Muth, I'm not sure what you're talking about in this picture, but it looks very important.
I was at the Philadelphia refinery.
Okay. Oh, wow. So yes, something, yes, very
like important. 2 weeks ago.
Non-crosswalks.
The first time I'm seeing
very important though. But yes, so this is what your meetings can look like. They can be official. You can bring a group of people. I went to them. Senator Muth went to them at the Philly refinery. You can also come to the Capitol and meet with us. So I'm just going to be really quick on what meetings look like and just kind of tips and tricks. So if you guys want to throw in the chat too while I'm going through this stuff, let me know yes or no whether you've ever met with a state level lawmaker. So go ahead and just type that in the chat while I'm talking about some stuff. So we all have those buttons that we've hit when we get an email and it's like, send this email to your rep, and it sends a really nice form letter. That's really great for our office to know kind of in bulk what people are talking about, but I receive hundreds of those a day. So we write a canned response. If we get a canned email, we send a canned response that we pull from our, like, here we pre-wrote this, we're going to send a response, thank you for it, we're either for this, against it, we're neutral on it, to get back to folks. So know that if you are going to approach a legislator, the more personal you can be with that delivery, so whether it's calling them on the phone and asking for a meeting or whether it's sending a personal email, you can expect a response that's more tailored to your approach. Have materials with you. You're not going to be able to cover everything in your meeting. And so if you have a simple one-pager or a folder, you can leave that with the representative or the member of their staff that you're meeting with. We do have a one-pager on the hazardous waste loophole. I believe Protect PT has one as well. So, you know, we can make sure that folks have access to those. I gave you a couple websites. Research your legislator. You don't want to go into a meeting with me and try to convince me to close the hazardous waste loophole. You're going to be wasting your time because I'm on the bill, right? So, if you're going to meet with Daryl Metcalf, for example, it's going to be a very different conversation. And each representative has a website. You can see the bills that they've done. You can see speeches they've given on the floor. So like research the people you're meeting with, and that way you don't need to change what you're saying, but you can frame it in a way. So if public health is really important to them, you can go in and talk about the cancer clusters. You can talk about how this impacts public health. They really care about the environment, or maybe they're a conservationist and they care about fishing and boating and gaming and all of that. That's another approach. So there's so many different frames to put this legislation in, but you have to understand the person who's going to be in front of you and what their agenda is that they've expressed in the public eye. What to expect. Sometimes these meetings can be an hour long. Sometimes they can be as short as 15 minutes. So really prep and prioritize the story you want to tell or the information that you want to make sure it gets across to the legislature. You might schedule a meeting with the legislator. They may get called to the floor to do something. They might get called to do something else. So you may meet with a staffer. That's okay, because oftentimes I rely, and Senator Muth rely on our staff to make sure that the most important things get to us. So, you know, still treat it as a professional meeting. The lawmakers are not experts. They're the people who get to vote and have the final say. but they are more than likely not experts. And I'm sure if you do your research, you can understand what they are an expert on and what they're definitely not. And I can tell you that there's probably no one in the General Assembly that understands this issue very intimately, or more so than the two folks that are on here. So you're going to have to go back to some basics and make sure things are really digestible and can be presented. And, you know, seize this opportunity. This, if you have been personally impacted by an issue, share your story. That is wisdom. That is a necessary piece to moving legislation and getting people to sympathize and show empathy and, you know, hopefully do what you ask them to do. During the meeting, try not to get too technical. Use titles. So even if it's someone you're walking into the lion's den, you know you don't like this legislator or anything that they've done, be respectful. Use titles. You know, that person is still taking time to meet with you. And you obviously are in there to try to convince them to do something for you. So that's kind of the best approach. You know, if you are a constituent, really stress that. If you're going in there and you're not a constituent, see if you have any personal stories on how this impacts their area and their constituents. Again, we have resources like maps on where this waste is ending up. So that could be a good source to draw from. And if you've been personally impacted, you are the expert of your story. There is no one else who has lived the life that you have. And if your life has been disrupted by an action from the General Assembly, you need to share that. And you can be assertive. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to back down, but you know, make sure that you are being very clear in an ask. I don't know how many times I've had amazing meetings with folks and I'm totally bought into whatever they're telling me. And then they go, okay, great, bye. And I have to be like, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to write a bill? Do you want me to sign on to a bill? Do you want me to host a policy hearing? Do you want me to talk to my colleagues about this bill? So make sure you have a clear ask. If you're meeting with your representative who signed on, thank you. I wanted you to understand this issue more, why it's important to me. Thank you for signing on. What I would like you to do is ask your colleague to sign on. You know, make sure there's an ask. That's like the most important thing. And just please understand you don't need to be an expert in T-norm or hazardous waste or oil and gas regulations. Talk about what it means to you. And we have so many experts that you can call on to help get those highly technical answers. And we'll make sure that both Senator Muth and I share our information. So if you do have a meeting with a legislator and you get a question that you don't know, or they say, hey, we just want to find out more about this bill, we can get someone there and we can help find the answer, or we can follow up with them directly. So, you know, this is going to be a team effort, and, you know, we're here for the long haul with you. I know we really talked for the whole hour, which was not our intent, but we are jamming a lot of information into a session. But if people want to stick around, I'd love to answer some questions. But really, thank you for the work that you've already done in your community and the work that I know you're going to continue to do to try to get this bill across the finish line.
Great. Thank you both. That was super, super helpful. I mean, I'm not that familiar with going to my legislator, but boy, I feel like I could go right now and be much more successful at it than I was before. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to go ahead and pop the chat up here. We are live on Facebook, so you can actually see the chat live as well. And I just want to see, Mary, did you identify any specific questions that you think would be good questions for us to start with?
Yeah, there are a couple questions that came in the chat. I can just read. I'll start with the first one from Lois. it was mentioned that some trucks entering landfills bypass the scanners. Is there any way to file a right to know request to see truck manifest in order to track the offending truck delivery?
So
go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not sure, but what we do know about the scanners is that they're not even efficient to measure all the different types of radiation that can be given off by waste. So I think that they are gamma and it doesn't do anything for alpha and beta. But checking the manifest could be an interesting thing. I'm not quite sure. Senator Muth, do you know anything about RTKs? You're far more versed in right to know requests than I am.
Sadly, yes.
File
I do file them often. I haven't succeeded yet with the Army Corps of Engineers, which is a difficult entity to get information from. But what I do know is that not every landfill, I do not believe that they are required to have cameras. So maybe that's something we should think about. Sara is introducing legislation. Everybody needs a Nest camera at their landfill fence, because part of what happened specifically at the Westmoreland landfill was, that they were coming after hours, but were still able to access. So whether or not someone gave them access, I don't know the specifics, but that dumping went undocumented, because typically you pull up, you get on the weigh station. There is some level of tracking relative to the amounts, but it's certainly, if you look at waste production spreadsheets, and I don't recommend anybody do this unless you're super nerdy like me, but if you look, because it's very time consuming, but if you look at waste production spreadsheets, you can look at them at least for any permitted frac pad, and it'll tell you the total tons, millions of tons of waste production at any frac pad in the Commonwealth, or it should be, and there's like a 3-month delay. So I've never lined up. I've looked to see which landfills are receiving waste from X frac pad, but in theory, you could probably do a cool check and balance, and I say cool because it's nerdy, but of the numbers of like what the landfill's reporting. And I don't believe that you can get the waste metrics from a landfill directly from the DEP website, but don't quote me on that. But you would literally have to go through manually waste production sheets and see, because it just lists different times they go to different landfills. So it's not like this frac pad in Washington County always goes to X landfill. It could be multiple, right? But you could get aggregate data showing, and maybe I should just ask for this. I once asked DEP for all the things permitted for Energy Transfer Sunoco, and they said it would take them 6 weeks. Could I scale it back a little bit? And then I forgot they have gas stations all along the turnpike and everything. So I scaled back what I wanted it for, but we could maybe ask them for by landfill, the waste for, have them sort it, because they actually still use Excel, not making that up. But you could get an idea to see like what's reported. But again, this is what's reported. And so, but it would be an interesting comparison. But I think you can right to know any of that. I think we try to avoid right to knows. They take so damn long, but, and just ask the regulator directly. But, again, if the DEP can't even tell us how many landfills there are in Pennsylvania, and how many of those landfills are even taking frac waste, and that's too higher up. So there might be, I'm not going to damn the DEP data department, because they've tried to be helpful and get information. So I don't, there are some good people that work there. They're just not in charge.
And actually, Lois, I know that she has done some digging in those waste reports before.
God bless you, Lois.
she knows full well how monotonous that data can be. And I think part of the other problem that this bill actually works to correct is that these trucks are labeled on the road and when they come into the landfill as residual waste. So unless you pull up that oil and gas report, and actually you can go to there is a report section of the DEP's website where you can get waste reports. I actually just pulled one for an operator. I was actually at a hearing last night for Olympus Energy, and I pulled up their waste report. You can pull up 12 months at a time or 13 months at a time, and you can see where the waste from each of their pads, where they sent it to, and you'd be so surprised. I mean, it goes everywhere. It doesn't even stay in our state. Sometimes it goes to other states. It goes to other places. And I know, we do a lot of work around the Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, and I know that waste goes everywhere too. Some of it goes to Ohio, some of it goes to Allentown, PA. Like it goes everywhere. And we know that waste is really bad. It's kind of a byproduct of fracking waste, right? Because it's the leachate, which is the landfill tea that has come from the landfill that still has the oil and gas waste constituents in it. So it's been filtered through the landfill once already. Mary, do we have any other questions? And while you're looking, I actually had a question when you were talking, Representative Innamorato. My question was, so you had said if a bill doesn't make it through committee, then it can't go forward. What if it doesn't make it through one committee? Can you try another committee to see if it might have more success?
You can get it. You still have to vote. You have to vote to send it to another committee. So you're kind of in the same boat. So we'll see. And if a bill comes through the House committee, a House process, it doesn't need to go through the same process in the Senate. I know we were trying to lobby to not have our bill go to the ERE committee. We wanted it to go to we thought maybe we could have a better chance in consumer affairs, and we weren't able to make the case for it with the leader, and he's the one who ultimately gets to assign the bills.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, is that in both chambers, the majority party has the power of every single committee. So it's not even the minority party gets to have any say. They can't even call an official committee hearing, let alone bring a bill up for a vote. And then further is the numbers on our committees, at least in the Senate. And I know they are in the House. I just don't know if the ratios are exactly the same, because there's less of us, but we have 4 Ds and 7 Rs. So you're, no matter what the bill is, you're just at the odds. And the Senate is very much, the majority party will not bring up anything for a vote that they don't have the majority of their members supporting. They are a united front and vote as a block. To chip 1 or 2 away, it's usually closer to an election year and whatever. But the president pro tem of the Senate, which is the highest position in the Senate, is who determines where the bills go, meaning which committee they're referred to. And there's a deadline in which you file a bill, and it has 14 days, I think, to be referred. And my bills have not been always referred in 14 days. And my bills last session would never go to the committee that they should have gone to, or where they went in the House. So I just stopped looking at it, because I was like, my bills they're never going to run. So I would have a veterans resolution that went to the rules committee or something. And so it is very frustrating, because there isn't a mechanism. If it's referred to one committee, then it does, as Rep. Innamorato said, it has to be voted out. And usually then it goes to the floor for first consideration. Then you can re-refer it to another committee. A lot of bills are re-referred to the Appropriations Committee, because if they have a fiscal impact, then it does have to go to the Appropriations Committee. So these would probably go to approps, just because it may have more staffing costs, to test and enforce. But, again, that's the normal process. And when you have 2 chairs of ERE that are embedded to the industry, Senator Yaw has, go look up his statement of financial interest and see where he has stock with. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we don't say this to sound hopeless, but I did show you the list of the co-sponsors we have, which is quite a bit, and our goal is to get Republicans on, and again, using that frame of conservation, right? Like if you're ruining pristine trout streams with this mismanagement, like that's a huge, would not only hit to their recreational activities, but to a very large economic driver in Pennsylvania. You can talk about industry fairness, right? Other industries are subjected to the same sort of regulation. And if it's determined to be unsafe to dispose in the same place that you throw your garbage that you put on the curb, or garbage that you put out that gets picked up, then they have an unfair financial it makes an unfair advantage for the oil and gas industry compared to other industries. So it might not be the public health issue or like frame, it might be different frames. And I think as we can just get, like right now we're focused on getting co-sponsors. If we get more co-sponsors, then we can make the case to move the bill, to re-refer it. It gives us more leverage on the inside if we can get folks, working and talking to the representatives on the outside.
And to add hope to it, remember, we were pushing for this and many of your organizations were helping. And then what did the governor and the DEP come out with? Some press release that they're going to increase testing at landfills. We're not really sure what type of testing, they said quarterly, but like, what are you testing for, et cetera. But it does show there is a terrible fear of being viewed in a negative light by both sides of the aisle. So that pressure and heat is so incredibly important. And so that's why I say, like, talking to your neighbors about this, it doesn't matter their party affiliation, because we're giving you the Senate and the House rules, which unfortunately are dictated by the majority party. And they would be if a different party was in the majority. That's the rules, right? We tried to change the rules, both chambers did, and we were shot down. So, but the general public, from a polling perspective, and then also just like talking to people that I go to everywhere. I'll go to whatever county you tell me to go to. And people do care about this. And it is an issue to get hunters and conservation and all these different entities, because this isn't a ban on industry. This is to protect the environment and public health. So I genuinely do believe that this is these three bills are not partisan in nature. They're made partisan under the dome of corruption of pay to play, where both sides of the aisle rely on gas and oil industry and certain building trade unions for campaign donations. And so you're talking to two elected officials who do not take special interest money. So we had to break that glass corrupt ceiling in Harrisburg by hustling and beating the establishment. And we don't fall into that, but the public is who they represent. So there is heat. They don't like negative headlines. So use your power to put on that heat.
Nice. Because
the truth's on our side. That's what we just have to keep hammering.
Yeah, that's right. We do have another question in the chat that I saw. There's a question from Ginny. It says, is it true that Summerlee and Ed Gainey are not on record in support? I didn't see their names. Could either of you speak to that?
Yeah, it just probably means that they didn't sign on, but we can ask them to sign on. I know sometimes it's kind of weird that I have this issue because I represent the city of Pittsburgh and Northern Allegheny County. We don't have any wells being drilled. We don't have pipelines running through our backyards like I know many of you do. We have our whole other issues that tend not to be this, but it does impact everyone. That's why I decided to take it on, is because we all live downstream from somewhere, and it does not stay in one place. And it can potentially impact the quality of my drinking water that, gets pulled from the Allegheny. So, it is something where this is like deeply, deeply interconnected across Pennsylvania. So it really is a statewide issue. All that to say is that I can talk to both of them and ask them to sign on.
Thank you. And Senator Muth, you were talking about the leachate testing. I actually do have a little bit of information on that. So they are going to be testing that leachate quarterly. And every landfill in the state will actually have to send their leachate quarterly to a certified lab that will test it for radiation, and that test can take several weeks. So what we're still, I think, unclear on with that process is, what are they going to do with the waste in between? Like, are they going to be able to ship the waste out, or ship the leachate out of the landfill before they get those tests back to say, okay, it's safe? That's the question that I had after talking with the gentleman at the DEP about the leachate testing. And I did think it was interesting that when that press release came out, like you'd mentioned about the leachate testing, that Governor Wolf did take, I felt like he took a lot of credit for that, when I believe it was the credit was to folks like you, as well as our Attorney General's office, that was really instrumental in making sure, as well as the residents that were on the ground that have been telling their story, right? So even more.
I think I'll just want to know what the type of testing is. That's the only thing. Like,
Yeah.
Is it the same crap we're doing now? Because like, cool, keep testing it quarterly. Like, you have a good point about what the storage of it, but also if you're just testing for gamma.
Yeah, and typically, yeah, right. I think the highest industry standard right now is like holding the waste for 21 days at least, and then doing the test. So I don't know if that's the type of hold they're going to do. Also, if anyone's water has been impacted, what Scott Perry and Dave Allard said in our hearing, when we asked if they tested for T-norm, when they knew that a drinking water source had been corrupted, we asked if they tested for this, and they said no, but if they asked for it, then we would. So I said, well, people wouldn't know how to ask for that, but that's neither here nor there. So I just want to put that out into the world, that if you would like the DEP to come in when they're doing their tests and test for radioactivity, and specifically for T-norm, then ask them. I'm very curious to see what they would do.
Yeah. I was actually just in Plum, where there's an injection well a few days ago, and there's already some water contamination or potential water contamination there from that injection well. And our concern is that is very close to the Allegheny River, which is the drinking water for Pittsburgh. So, and they're taking, I think it was in August, they took, was it 8,000 barrels? I'd have to pull up the statistics, but they're taking a tremendous amount of fracking waste right here in Allegheny County. So it's going everywhere, but there's a lot here too, and there's plans for more wells at that site. So more importance to keep this the pressure on our legislators in order to push this forward. What other questions do we have, Mary? Do you see anything?
So I saw another one in the chat earlier. Can local gas and oil ordinances amend language to prohibit the burying of oil and gas waste?
You mean like at the municipal level?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I guess I'm thinking of Grant Township trying to block their injection well in Indiana County, and they're in the 7,000th layer of hell in court. So like, I think it would be wise for municipalities to do this for the sake of, you don't have to have, think about it, you don't have to have industry in your municipality. In theory, you know, like I know my borough, they take radioactive, not only do we have a nuke plant 5 miles away, but we also take radioactive waste from Canada, but it's like uniforms, it's low level, but they do some sort of dispose. So I imagine you could, I don't know that there's preemption on that. We could research that though. I don't want to tell you wrong. I know that you will be challenged by, so say a township's just like trying to make money off industry, right? Like they're like, oh, let's just like when they sell out their water, you know, source to privatize it or whatever, they're trying to make money so they don't have to raise taxes or whatever. But if they were some, you know, whatever entity, corporate entity came in and said, we want to do an injection well, or we want to just bury waste, because I think obviously that could be I guess an enticement for some communities. So I'll find out. I wonder if anybody's ever tried to block the burial of it. So that's a good question. Let me dig on that one.
So I haven't heard of the blocking of a burial, but I do know that in the Penn Township ordinance, there is a provision that toxic fluids or toxic substances can't be stored for more than a certain amount of time in quantities over a certain amount. And I don't know what that amount is off the top of my head, but we actually went to court challenging one of the well pads, saying that the fluids that they're not only using to frack, but then also the waste that is produced at the pad contains these chemicals that are toxic. And the industry would actually not admit during the hearing that it was toxic. When asked directly, is this toxic fluid? They said, I don't know, but I wouldn't drink it, but I wouldn't categorize it as toxic. And they actually referenced the fact that it's not categorized as toxic waste, is categorized as residual waste. So this is giving, I think, a shield to the oil and gas industry when they're fracking in our neighborhoods to be able to say, no, it's not toxic. The government says it's not toxic. So therefore,
well, because the loophole, of course they get to say that.
Loophole, that's right. So super important. Yeah.
Well, exactly why we tell people about these loopholes, because it's the magic's in the words. And right now, if they use those words, it is exempt. And who the heck would know? It breaks my heart that there's frac pads right next to where, I mean, anywhere in Pennsylvania, but because people are just getting sick and their water's ruined, but right next to where I went to elementary school in Murraysville, and Sunoco spilled into Turtle Creek. Yeah. Where I was a Girl Scout. I'm like coming back to wreak havoc.
So I think when we're talking, sometimes it can be confusing because we talk about this being hazardous, but there's also like hazardous waste is defined in statute, right? There are specific tests that determine the radioactivity, the toxicity, the flammability, and the corrosivity of a material, right? That is in statute as defined by the DEP. And so, you know, when we talk about, I'm looking at Megan's question, when we're talking about this stuff being hazardous, there's not testing for it for those criteria. So like what happened in Bell Vernon is we just knew something was happening and it wasn't passing the current standards that exist, let alone these higher standards that we were asking. So we knew something was going on with it, but we don't actually know if it was meeting that threshold. But we know whatever was happening was bad. And the DEP just said, just keep accepting it and, you know, paying the fines or whatever. But we still don't know whether if we put that waste aside and held it for 21 days, whether it would manifest in those 4 criteria that are actually, you know, defined in statute and where there are best practices and there is a scientific method to do that. So, you know, I think sometimes we say hazardous knowing that like there is harmful constituents in it, but then there is like a legal term that has a specific type of testing that needs to be done. And that's what we want to do is we want to subject this waste to that official testing so we can actually have peace of mind and we can have data that tells us wherever this waste is going. And if it does exceed that criteria and it can be classified as hazardous as opposed to the current state of residual, they have to dispose of it in very specific ways. Now that's a whole other conversation on where that ultimately ends up. But from my understanding that there are a handful, maybe like literally under 5 sites in the United States that accept that type of waste at those levels. So it would be expensive for them to dispose of it properly.
Especially because we know some of the data that has been, you know, uncovered is the levels of radium-226 and 228, and you're past the levels for nuclear waste. So, I mean, like, they don't want, you know, obviously they don't want to test for this because then they know they have to pay to dispose of it in a far more expensive manner. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it is radioactive and it's just exempt. I mean, and it's killing people.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I saw Pat's question about New York, and New York was accepting our waste until August of 2020. So they passed a bill at the State House. It was signed by Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, and they no longer accept our waste, which means before that, 80% of waste that we knew of was staying in Pennsylvania. Which probably means that more is going to stay in Pennsylvania. So if we think about the ratio of like how much water gets injected into a fracked well and how much natural gas we pull out compared to the amount of waste, it's around a 7-to-1 ratio. So for every barrel of natural gas, we produce 7 barrels of waste. So if you think we're the second highest extracted from state when it comes to natural gas, imagine that just exponentially more in terms of waste, and it has to go somewhere. And we know that the majority of it is staying here in Pennsylvania. We just don't know where, and we don't know what's in it. And so all we're asking is for very common sense regulations to be put in place so that, again, that we can have peace of mind when it comes to this industry operating in our state.
Okay. And I know it's about it's almost 7:30. Are there any other questions before we hop off tonight? Mary, do you see any other questions that you think were unanswered? Or if you have a question that wasn't answered and you want to hop off mute, you certainly can and ask your question. Okay. Well, I think that this was super informative from many different perspectives. Yes, thank you, Senator Muth and Representative Innamorato, for all of your knowledge that you shared with us. And so I think that the major call to action is for us to get on the phone and set up a meeting with representatives and senators in our area and talk to them about the bills and share those personal stories, do our research. One takeaway that I have that I think is really great, the one pager, and the making sure that we have a solid ask, that we're asking them to do something, and hopefully we could get maybe an okay or yes, I'll think about it before we leave their office if we want to be really persistent. So I think that that's a really good path forward. And I want everybody to, if they can, put their thumb up in the reactions on Zoom if they are planning on going to their legislator and doing just that. All right. Got some thumbs up there. Yes, that's a good outcome. All right. And so, Mary, are you going to be sending around? I know we popped a lot of links in the chat. This will be live on Facebook. So those links were also in the Facebook chat. We were doing both at the same time. We are going to post it on YouTube as well. So but those links and the one pager and all the materials we can send that out to everyone that registered. We can send that out afterwards. Correct, Mary?
Yes, yeah, I pulled all of those links tonight, so I'll probably be sending an email tomorrow morning with all of those links, and yeah, hopefully we can get that recording process for YouTube and everything, so you can all share it with your friends and neighbors as well.
Yeah. Is there a way we could share the presentation as well? Yeah.
Sure. It wasn't, I felt like I was a high schooler cramming because we had session this week and I was like, I want to put this in. But yes, absolutely. It's I wouldn't say my best work, but thanks to my team for helping me at the last minute. So if it's a little back and forth skippity, I'm a over communicator. So absolutely, I'm fine with it as long as Rep. Innamorato is.
Great. Yeah, it takes a village.
Yeah, it does. Well, it does. Thank you for being in the village.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for attending, and thank you again to Representative Innamorato and Senator Muth for coming on and schooling us all about the waste loophole and how we can make a difference in our community. I hope everyone has a great evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a good one.